Congratulations.
On what?
On being right about all of it. Well, at least most of it.
Gladys and Jellybean Jones enter the picture, and Hiram's ultimate plan kinda gets revealed. So let's break down Riverdale Season 3, Episode 8, and find out just what happened. Rise and shine on, y'all. Lisa here with my final Riverdale recap for 2018. That's right, this week is the mid-season finale of Season 3 of Riverdale, and it is crazy to think that this is the last recap for 2018. This year went by so fast. But be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my recaps or news videos in 2019. But this episode, this was quite a doozy, man. I gotta say, Betty continues to be a badass, and she's one of the few characters that I've actually liked the arc that she has gone on the past couple seasons. They've really kept up with her. And I just gotta say, all hail the Griffin Queen, right?
Follow me, your Griffin Queen.
Plus, Cheryl finally gets something to do in this episode, which I think a lot of us have been waiting for. And Hiram, he's not our Gargoyle King, but just who is he doing all the bidding and dirty work for? That's the big question. And I also love the addition of Gina Gershon as Gladys Jones. I think she's a character I would love to know more about, as well as Jellybean. I've always been a fan of Gina's, and I think she just fits perfectly with this cast. So can't wait to see what else happens with them. Plus, Jellybean, she is quite the sharp shooter. I think I need to see her teamed up with Cheryl, like get their slingshot and their bow and arrow together, and I think they could actually be the ones to save Riverdale. So watch out, world. And for the hundreds of you that have commented on my last couple recaps hating Ethel, those opinions might finally turn a little bit back around towards the good, as this girl finally gets clean of those damn fizzle rocks and starts acting right again. It's the spell of the game and those fizzle rocks that have really made her so annoying. I do want to give a shout out to you guys again for being awesome commenters, because you guys make me laugh too, and you catch things I don't catch. And a lot of you were laughing really hard at the last episode about just how bad some of the continuity is on this show. I mean, Riverdale, if you think about it, is such a mess, but we love it and we just can't quit it. And you found two major things that whoever was editing this show should have found. Number one was you pointed out that Archie seemed to have healed from his infected wound pretty easily, and that Brand wasn't really there. Also, you pointed out that when Betty was spying on Sister Woodhouse and Ethel and then bringing a girl into the chambers, she ran into a room. It didn't have a window with bars on it, but yet Betty looked out of a window with bars. So you guys are awesome. You always catch great things, so that's why I love reading your comments. So I'll try to give more shout outs to actual specific commenters in the new year. But for now, let's get back to actually talking about this episode. Let's start off at the oh so delightful Sisters of Quiet Mercy. Betty is doing her best to convince the sisters she's following their plan, doing what she's supposed to be, which includes taking those awful fizzle rocks. But of course, Betty doesn't really take them, she pukes them up right after. Now Ethel and the girls continue to play their Griffins and Gargoyle games and getting deeper into it, and yes, the game is still really weirdly syncing up with what is happening in the real world, because we see Ethel say that their group was stricken with poison and compromised, and then over back in Riverdale we see that at the high school, Veronica and the Vixens end up having like a massive group seizure. So yeah, I still don't understand the whole timing of how the game connects with real life. That's what's tripping me out with this whole thing. Anyway, Betty learns about the seizure at Riverdale High when Alice comes to visit, and now Betty knows she has to kick her plan into high gear because the pressure's really on if she's gonna save people. And she knows just what to say to get under Ethel's skin. Betty sits with a group of girls and tells them how she has this very special relationship with the Gargoyle King, and that he's called her his new favorite. And of course, this is right within earshot of nosy, jealous Ethel. And Betty suggests that, well, if Ethel wants proof, they should go see the Gargoyle King together, since Ethel apparently all of a sudden is important enough to have the keys to the Gargoyle King's chamber. Now, of course, this is all part of Betty's plan to get Ethel to sober up and come to her aid. So Betty locks Ethel in this chamber until she comes down off of her high, and Ethel finally realizes she's been duped and that she's been seeing hallucinations because of the fizzle rocks, and that the Gargoyle King, he was just, he wasn't really there. There's just a gargoyle statue in that room, but everything else was a hallucination. So Betty explains what the fizzle rocks are doing, how they're supplied by Hiram and causing hallucinations, and that combined with the game are being used to scare these girls into submission. So now they need to team up to get information from Sister Woodhouse about how this game originated, what Hiram has to do with it, and everything like that, and then they're gonna make their big escape. So Ethel distracts the nurse while badass Betty grabs Sister Woodhouse.
Don't scream, sister.
Oh, sorry.
You're coming with me. It's time we pay a little visit to your king.
Can Betty just keep her hair down more often? I mean, I think she's a badass with the ponytail too, but I kind of like this version when Betty lets her hair down a little bit more. Anyway, they tie up Sister Woodhouse in the Gargoyle King's chamber, and she eventually says that the gargoyle statue had been there since the asylum opened, so they used it to bring the girls down to that chamber and basically scare them, and some of the more disturbed girls are the ones who started to see this Gargoyle King. They created this game to deal with their fears, so the sisters embraced the game as a therapeutic tool because it embedded itself into the minds of the players and it helped them kind of control these girls. So then it just started to get kind of out of hand, and she says it was never meant to leave the walls of Sisters of Quiet Mercy. But then we never get told how exactly the game made its way into the real world, so we still have that cliffhanger and mystery. Now, after leaving Sister Woodhouse locked up in the chamber, Ethel and Betty concoct a plan to get the girls and the kids from the gay conversion wing to escape with them because they know that the girls feel safe because of this game, so they gotta come up with a way. So they decide to make up a quest for the game, since Ethel's the game master, and they say that Betty is the Griffin Queen, and that the Gargoyle King is dead, and that she's leading them to safety and giving them hope. So they all end up escaping, and just as they're leaving, Alice pulls up in her car, and it seems like everyone may be heading to the farm, especially since Riverdale is now locked down and quarantined, but more on that in a bit. Let's move on to Archie and Jughead's adventure to Toledo. They make their way to Gladys's shop, and while it seems like she has most of her act cleaned up, she's still doing a little bit of shady business, stealing stereos and parts and stuff. Oh, and she also seems to think that Jugchi or Archhead or whatever you want to call it is a thing.
You two finally got together, huh? I always knew there was something going on between you.
No, we're not together. We're just on the road together.
Yeah, like a romance.
They settle in and have a feast that night and fill in Gladys on all of the drama that's been going on back home in Riverdale, including Hiram and everything. And then Archie decides to take a little stroll through the junkyard, and that's when he gets quite the surprise as he gets jumped by Penny Peabody, who says that there's a bounty in Archie's head, and that Archie left a lot of little breadcrumbs as to where he was going. That's not very surprising because Archie's not the brightest bulb in the box, but also how come if there were a lot of breadcrumbs that Penny was the only one to find him? Anyway, it is young Jellybean to Archie's rescue here.
Drop the butter knife, bitch.
Careful, kid. He might poke your eye out.
Yep, as pointed out last episode and numerous times before, we cannot go more than like 5 minutes without Archie being captured and having to be rescued. And a lot of those times I do like that it's always usually by like a strong woman, right? Like Betty saves him, Jellybean saves him, Veronica saves him. I'm sure their dudes have saved him too, but I love that Jellybean is the one who saves him here. So now they have Penny tied up, and Jughead wants answers about what Hiram is up to with this game. Like, he really wants his answers. It's kind of getting a little bit scary, and even Gladys sees just how much Jughead is caught up in this game. But Gladys sends them away and promises to get the answers because she's more concerned with this whole eye for an eye thing because Jughead told her about that nasty scar Penny gave him. So yeah, Gladys wants to return the favor. And well, let's just say we don't see Penny Peabody again, just Gladys wiping off a lot of blood from her hands. So I'm just going to guess that maybe Penny found herself in between some car crushers or something. I don't think we're going to be hearing from her again for a very long time, if not ever again. So Gladys does tell Jughead that he is too caught up in this game, but essentially that Hiram chased them out of town kind of as part of the plan, so they wouldn't be there when he made his big play or his big move. And then in the middle of the night, Gladys pulls Jughead aside to kind of give him some brutal truth. She tells him there's also a bounty basically on anyone's head who helps Archie. So now she's at risk, Jellybean's at risk, Jughead's at risk. So they just basically have to unfortunately cut Archie loose. And of course Archie overhears all this and agrees. So they get Archie a ride to the border, and Jughead plans to go back to Riverdale to take down Hiram. So who are their rides? None other than the hot dads of Riverdale, of course, because they always come to the rescue. Yeah, Fred shows up to drive a now dark-haired Archie, aka normal-haired KJ Appa, to the border, while FP comes to take Jughead home. I then thought for a second we were kind of starting to watch A Dog's Purpose 2, which there actually is one, but that's not the point. But we see Archie head off for the border with his trusty dog Vegas at his side. I mean, I do love that Archie is heading off on whatever adventure he's going on with man's best friend. He does need a friend, so I love that Fred brought him Vegas. Meanwhile, Jughead and FP return to Riverdale and find that they can't get in because, well, the town's been put on lockdown and quarantine. So I'm guessing that maybe they're gonna have to head back to Toledo to like really sit down and come up with a plan, because I'm pretty sure that I read that Gladys and Jellybean will be back for another episode, or however many, I don't know, but they'll be back, and that would make more sense, you know, unless they find a place near Riverdale to just kind of like, you know, take up shop. But I feel like they would need some backup, and Gladys kind of has her little, as they said in the thing, Lord of the Flies little group there, a bunch of kids that she's taken in for her shop that I feel like would come in handy if they really need to kind of take somebody down. So I'm excited to see whatever FP and Jughead team up is to save Riverdale. Alright, so now why is Riverdale on lockdown and quarantine? Well, it all starts after our slow-mo vixen walk down the hall while Kevin and Moose make out. And then it all just takes a turn, because Cheryl turns around and all of a sudden her vixens, including Veronica and Tony, are on the floor having a massive seizure, like a group seizure. Now I'm just confused about these dang seizures and how they're happening, since we haven't seen Veronica, as far as we know, touch Fizzle Rocks or come, like, she wants nothing to do with them, right? And if it was aimed at all of the vixens, like, why would Cheryl be the one who isn't having a seizure? Well, one thing we do know is that you do not mess with Tony Topaz unless you want to feel the wrath of Cheryl Blossom, and she gets all worked up in this episode. Now, it's been a while, but Shoney fans finally do get some Shoney love as Cheryl nurses Tony back to health and even pops a pretty big question. Not the question, but a question.
Cuckoo bananas for you, Humphrey. Won't you move in?
As long as I'm the big spoon.
Now, Veronica ends up waking up back in her bed at the Pembroke after her seizure, which she's not happy about because she obviously just went away from that house. She ends up walking in on Hiram and Hermione arguing over some kind of miscalculation of some sort, but we don't hear exactly all the details. And of course, they try to attribute Veronica's seizure to stress, not what it really is. And then they say they want to send Veronica off to New York for some rest and relaxation. But Veronica, of course, calls BS and runs to talk to Reggie about everything. Now, she knows they don't want her around for something. That means something big is going to happen, and they're trying to protect her. But she, of course, is not about to leave. So she sends Reggie to get some intel on this whole Fizzle Rock situation, because she's decided that this year she's determined to finally stop her parents. Because, you know, last year she kind of pretty much helped her parents build up to where we are now in this season. Now, at school the next day, basically everything extra has been shut down, and Cheryl informs Veronica that there's an emergency school board meeting that night. She thinks it's to shut down Riverdale High, and that Hiram and Hermione are in charge of all this. Then we have Principal Weatherby and a bunch of guys in hazmat suits marching into the school to take away the girls who had the seizures, and of course Veronica manages to get away just in time. Reggie then fills Veronica in and says that the Fizzle Rocks are coming from the prison that Hiram built, which we're not surprised about, and that they're being given out for free by a new gang, the Gargoyles. Then at the school board meeting, it's pretty apparent that Hiram has pretty much everyone but maybe Alice in his clutches, including Principal Weatherby. We also have Hermione deciding that they are going to shut down Riverdale High until it is deemed okay. But that's when Veronica and Cheryl come barreling into this meeting to call out Hiram for all the crap he has been doing, like not actually calling the CDC and faking that, as well as using the prison to make drugs and Southside High and all of that. Now, by now, you know how smooth Hiram is, so of course he has an answer to everything, and how they probably also think that he's the Gargoyle King. Ugh, sometimes I just want to smack that little smug smirk off of his face. Cheryl then demands to know the real answers because this whole thing also involves her Vixen squad. Then Penelope ends up having a seizure, and the only thing I actually cared about in this moment is Cheryl's priceless reaction to that seizure. Later, Hiram commends Veronica for her gusto and how she was right about almost all of what she called him out on, but that it's actually all much bigger than what she's given him credit for. And that what's next is basically a biblical proportions that's been in the making for years. He basically says he's working on a kingdom and a legacy, and of course he offers Veronica a spot as his right-hand woman, but she's just like, wait till the world sees what you're doing. But it seems like Hiram isn't too concerned about that. Finally, Betty calls Veronica, and a lot of you are like, how come no one has noticed Betty's missing? Because, like, are these people horrible friends? Well, Veronica says they just assumed that she was at the farm, so I guess that makes sense since they know Alice went to the farm. But still, wouldn't you have tried to call Betty a few times and then gotten concerned when she never answered? Well, the girls basically fill each other in on what kind of hell they've all been experiencing and the plans on what to do. So, Veronica and Cheryl's new mission is to find out how Claudius is tied into this whole thing. So they head off to torture Mama Blossom with buckets of syrup, which she actually seems to enjoy way too much. All she really tells them is that Hiram is finally going to turn Riverdale into a place where they can all pursue their businesses. So for her, I'm guessing it's the drug business and her brothel. Veronica then asks for more details, and Penelope says she'll tell them, but then of course we don't actually get to hear what is said here. Cheryl and Veronica then enlist Kevin and the RROTC cadets as their backup, and they head to Hermione's office to try to strip her of the mayorship and stop her from shutting down the school, but as you would expect, they're just too late.
The order went out 10 minutes ago. It's starting.
And that's when Riverdale is put on quarantine, and we get to hear Hiram talking to a Governor Dooley on the phone about how that governor is going to work on keeping the outside world at bay while Hiram takes care of Riverdale. So that's why Hiram was not too worried about Veronica, saying the rest of the world would get him. Hiram, of course, has a plan for everything, and as we saw in the last episode, we know that Hiram's reach goes far beyond, well, maybe not far, but it goes to towns outside of Riverdale. It goes to that Athens town and maybe even more. Then we get to see Hiram having a toast with the Gargoyle King, and now we just have to figure out who the heck is in that ridiculous Gargoyle King getup. And that pretty much wraps up the first half of season 3 of Riverdale and this episode. So we get our setup for kind of some things we're going to get in the second half, like the farm, as it seems like Alice, Betty, Ethel, and the released kids from Sisters of Quiet Mercy will be heading there, since they maybe won't be able to get back into Riverdale kind of proper, because is Sisters of Quiet Mercy actually like in Riverdale, or is it so far on the outskirts that maybe, they won't be able to get back into town? I don't know, but I think we obviously will get to see the farm because we still haven't met Edgar Evernever, and I feel like he wouldn't come to town, he'd have to be at the farm. Also, Archie and Vegas, they're heading to, I guess, Canada as the border, since all they said was the border, and Mexico seems like quite too far away from Toledo to fit into this timeline. So, yeah. Jughead and FP, they're locked out of Riverdale, and whatever the master plan is for Hiram and the Gargoyle King, I don't know, but it seems to be getting very serious, and maybe whatever's happening is gonna make some, country panic. It's gonna spread to the, I don't know, where's this Governor Dooley from? Just how does Hiram know everybody? It's all getting confusing, but I'm guessing that the game had to have made it to the outside world by someone who obviously was in the Sisters of Quiet Mercy at one point. Now, first thought would be this could be a way to incorporate Chick back into the show, because we don't know for sure that he ever died. But that doesn't really make sense because Chick's only like maybe 24, 25. He'd be too young, because whoever brought this game to the outside world would have had to be older or the same age as the parents, since the parents played that when they were in high school. Now, we do know Penelope grew up in Sisters of Quiet Mercy until she was 8. So could it be her, and then maybe she shared it with the Blossoms? And could the Gargoyle King be Clifford Blossom, since so many of you think that he is actually still alive? I mean, in that flashback episode, we didn't really learn a lot of details about anyone's particular backstory except Penelope's. Like, they made sure to spend some time on her whole little story there, and I feel like that had to be for a reason, right? Because I'm trying to think of what other characters we met that could maybe fit this bill. Maybe it's the Gargoyle King is even just Penelope herself. Now, sometimes I do feel like Tom Keller could be a bit suspicious because they made him out to be such like a good guy, but he was part of Hiram's little Griffins and Gargoyles gang back with Dilton Doyley's dad back in high school before they joined the big group, right? So could they be working together? Obviously, we had Tom Keller being stripped of the sheriff position. Could that have all been a plot to get Tom out of the sheriff position and given him kind of a you know, an undercover way, or a right now the words are failing me because my brain is so tired. But, you know, giving him some cover to be like, okay, now he can just go and lay low, but then do all this sneaky stuff and no one would ever suspect him. Or, of course, there's always, could the Gargoyle King be somebody we haven't met yet? I don't know, but what is the ultimate goal with this master plan? Because Hiram says this is a massive, massive thing of like apocalyptic or biblical proportions. So is the plan just to have Riverdale become the ultimate Fizzle Rocks factory, and maybe distributing these to the whole country and causing them to hallucinate and using this game to all fall under the spell of Hiram and the Gargoyle King's commands, and then they can control the whole country and then maybe the world? What the hell is happening? I just hope we get more answers than questions when the show finally comes back January 16th for the second half of the season. So let's just go ahead and watch the promo clip.
Do you think killing me will solve all your problems?
Alright, so it looks like Reggie and Veronica, that romance, the veggie romance that was predicted kind of at the beginning of the season, will be happening. And we also get our first look at Kelly Ripa as Hiram's mistress. That's right, she's going to be guest starring in the second half of the season. There's also some Shoni and Bughead steamy moments, but also Archie coming face to face with Hiram back in his red hair. So somehow he makes his way back to town. So what is it that finally gets him to come back? Also, there's someone that maybe looks like Moose at Sisters of Quiet Mercy in the chamber, and it seems like maybe this second half of the season is going to continue to confuse me as much as this first. But you know, guys, that I can't quit watching. Seems like you guys can't quit watching. Like I said, I hope we finally get some answers. For now, though, I want you to hit me up in the comments down below or on social media with all your thoughts on this week's episode. Who do you think is the Gargoyle King? What do you think is their plan with Hiram and Riverdale and their ultimate plan? And what do you want to see happen in the second half of the season? Let me know, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos, and check out some of my latest interviews right over here. I'm Lisa. As always, thanks for hanging out with me and talking all things Riverdale here in 2018. Here's to 2019.